It's really not as much fun to do this when there's no Chris to banter with, but here we are. It also feels really weird to just talk to myself, but I'm an only child, so I should be used to it at this point. Hey adventurers, welcome to Let's Just Go podcast. I'm Kayla, and today Chris is too busy going to Lighthouse Point on the inaugural sailing with Disney Cruise Line, so it's just me. That being said, I'm going to tell you all about Vancouver, BC. So I grew up south of Seattle, lived in the area for most of my childhood. Didn't really take my first trip to Vancouver until 2019. And it was a quick trip up and back for a Michael Bublé concert. Then I went again a couple of years ago for a Disney cruise to Alaska, and we spent a few days before the cruise hanging out. And then I went again over Memorial Day weekend. So I think Vancouver's great. I wish that I had explored it more as a kid than I did. But it's been really fun to go as an adult and like really get to experience all that is Vancouver. So my most recent trip was me and Brian, my boyfriend. We went up. We live about 3 hours from Vancouver right now in Tacoma. That's without traffic. So we were leaving on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, and we got to Everett, which is a halfway point essentially. Spent the night. I was like obsessively watching the wait times at the border, and they were really low on Friday night. And I was like, oh, we're going to do so great. We're going to wake up on Saturday and we're going to go, and it's going to be so easy. I was wrong. We sat for an hour at the border waiting to cross. I have Nexus, which is essentially a fast pass to go over the Canadian border. It's like in line with like Global Entry and TSA PreCheck and like those programs. So there's one for Canada called Nexus, and then I cannot remember the name, but there's one for Mexico too. And you can apply for them and be approved, and then you have to go to the border to like do an interview. So I have that. It includes Global Entry and TSA PreCheck, and it's way cheaper than Global Entry, which is great. But I can only use it if I have other people in the car with me that also have it. So like my mom has it, so she and I can use the fast pass lane. But god damn it, Brian doesn't have it. So I was like Googling if I could drop him off and have him walk across. And they actually say that you can have your Nexus pass revoked. So didn't do that. Waited the hour. Then got lost in Surrey. I think it was Surrey, out the like suburbs of Surrey, because my phone wasn't wanting to switch over to the right data, and I really had to pee, and so we ended up finding a Safeway. Everything was fine. Anyways, that was our trip getting to Vancouver. We wanted to take the train. The train was going to be expensive and also like left at weird times that just wouldn't have aligned very well. Like it would have left late at night to get to Vancouver, and then it would have left really early in the morning to come back. So we opted not to do that, and instead we drove, even though we both absolutely despise driving. That being said, Vancouver is probably one of the best places in North America for public transit. So we were staying in like the suburbs of Vancouver, like definitely not anywhere near downtown, but there was a SkyTrain stop 10 minutes walking from where we stayed, which was really great. The SkyTrain it can connect you from the airport to downtown without having to change lines, which is really great. It can take you basically in any direction from Vancouver that you need. The buses are also really easy. You can tap to pay on all of them, which is great. So we went on a couple different buses. We took the SkyTrain. We also got some lifts because I just didn't want to like have to wait. So On Saturday, right after we got to Vancouver, we went to Granville Island, which, if you've ever been to Seattle, I would compare it to Pike Place, except that it's on an island. Or I'm trying to think of other places that I could compare it to. Kind of like Reading Terminal Market in Philly. I don't really know. It's just like, it's a shopping and like dining area that is very like touristy, with lots of different types of vendors. So we went there. We took the bus to get there. First we took the SkyTrain, then we got on the bus, and we only had to pay the one time because you have 90 minutes to transfer, which is really great. Go to Granville Island, hung out, did a bunch of stuff, and then when we went to leave, the bus was canceled, and the next bus was 50 minutes away. So I was like, fuck this, and we got a lift to get back because I wasn't feeling very good. So we went back to where we were staying. But Granville Island itself is great. So there's Granville Island Brewery, which is currently closed, but I think it's supposed to be reopening soon. Their beers are fantastic. You can actually buy like cases at a little store next door when they're open. That's what we did for our Disney cruise, because the Disney Cruise Line lets you take, I think it's a 6-pack per person. Maybe it's 2 6-pack. I can't remember exactly. But we got a 6-pack of beer to take with us on the cruise. We drank 2. So that's something you're interested in, it's a great local brewery. There's a bunch of different food vendors. So there's like a pickle place. There's like a whole food court. There's a produce stand. There's a butcher. There are, just like a lot of different things that you can have there. I know that's not helpful, is it? There's a really good donut place called Lee's Donuts that are fantastic. Like, we had lunch, and then I was like, Brian, do you want to get donuts? And Brian was like, yeah, okay, I guess so. I couldn't finish mine because I was so full and I just like wasn't feeling very good. But he was like, oh my God, this is so good. There's a line to get the donuts, but the line moves very quickly, thankfully. But it's like a line outside. So depending on the time of year you're visiting, you might be staying in a really hot line or a really cold line. So just keep that in mind. You can actually get to Granville Island if you're downtown. You can take a little aqua bus to get to Granville Island, and that's what my mom and I did when we came a couple years ago, which was so fun. It's not part of like the normal public transit options. So like if you were, like I was talking about the 90-minute transfer, if you were like on a bus and got off the bus and got on the aqua bus, that's not, they're like independent of Vancouver public transit. But they're really cute little boats that go to a couple different spots along the water in Vancouver, which is really fun. So I highly suggest going to Granville Island. There are some really amazing artists. There's like a whole artist section. And it's a lot of different mediums, which is really cool. There's also a sake place, which is really fun, and the sake is good. It's not like an all day stop, but it's like a couple hour stop, which is perfect in my opinion. So we went to Granville Island. That was really great. 10 out of 10 would recommend. The next day we went to Chinatown and did actually like a really cool tour of Chinatown. If you want the link, let me know and I'll send it to you. But this woman is, I don't remember what generation Chinese Canadian she is, but she has access to these special places in Chinatown that are specifically for like the Chinese elders to go hang out. And we got to see them. And for those of you who don't know, I went to China when I was in high school and I was blown away by it. And I think it's an amazing place. And this Chinatown tour, we went into one of these buildings and I was like, oh my God, this feels exactly like China. Like it was wild to me, like how much I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what being in like a school or like a community center in China is like. So that was really cool. We had some dim sum that was really good. I had some tea from the oldest tea shop in Chinatown, and that was fantastic. We went to the like little Chinese gardens that were really pretty. Also, it was pouring down rain this entire trip, which was unfortunate. But we had that in the morning, which was a lot of fun. We didn't want to go back to where we were staying, really. Like, we were We could have, but we didn't want to. So from there, we got on a bus and went to Stanley Park. So Stanley Park is, I would say it's like the Central Park of Vancouver. Like everybody knows what Central Park is, right? So it's this huge park, just right off of downtown. And it's all along the water. It's really pretty. So Brian and I walked probably about a mile, maybe a mile and a half along the seawall in the rain. And then we realized we were hungry. So we decided to get on bikes in the rain because that's a good idea. There's like a bike rental company throughout downtown Vancouver. Well, throughout all of Vancouver. And so we got on those. It was awful. My bike was in the highest gear and I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't change. Figured it out towards the end, but not before I thought I was going to die and have an asthma attack. So we had to explore the park. We got to see some really cool totem poles, it's so fascinating. Not history, but just like the stories behind totem poles. I think that it's something that a lot of people in the United States probably don't understand. Like maybe you've seen a totem pole before, but you don't really understand the significance of it. But every totem pole tells a story. And at Stanley Park, there's a totem pole section that has like plaques with the stories of those totem poles. Same thing if you go to Alaska, most of the ports will have totem poles and some history there, which is really cool. So I think totem poles are really fascinating. So we saw some of those. Then we hopped on our bikes. We wanted to go to Stanley Park Brewery, and it's towards the front of the park. And the bike path along the seawall is one way, and the car path is one way. Because I was like, let's just get a lift. But then if we got the lift, they would have to drive us through the entire park to get to the brewery. So we biked. We made it. Thankfully, they were able to seat us immediately. We got some delicious food. We did some beer flights, had just a fantastic time, hung out for a couple hours. And then we actually we did a lot in one day. We actually had a photography class that we did. So Brian got me a camera specifically for the podcast for Christmas, and it's not very easily compatible with my computer, which is too bad, but it's a really nice camera. And so he's been trying to figure out how to use it and really like enjoying learning all about the camera. And so we took this class where we went to Gastown, and he directed me on my iPhone, and he directed Brian with this DSLR on how to take different photos. Spoiler alert, I was really good at it, and Brian had a learning curve. I mean, in his defense, he was using a camera that he doesn't really know very well. Like the whole point was that he's trying to figure out how to use it. Where like, I'm a pro at taking photos on my iPhone. Hello? Like, I'm a millennial woman. Of course I can take photos. But it was really fun, and like I learned a lot too. And that had us going late into the night. My phone was almost dead. And the guy that was taking us around was like, can you please order a Lyft before I leave? Like, I want to make sure that you're good and that like someone's coming to get you. Because my phone was, I can't remember. It was at like 10% maybe. So that was fun. And then we turned around on the next day and woke up and immediately just like left because I wanted to get back over the border as fast as I possibly could to beat the rush that I was assuming was coming on Memorial Day. And I succeeded, and we didn't have a single wait. We just pulled right up, gave them our passports, went through. But I will say Vancouver is such a unique place. There is so much diversity, so much good food. The public transit is fantastic. The people generally are just like really nice. And there's so much to see and do. Like, I have barely explored, and I recognize that. But I think that the things that I've done have been a lot of fun. And if you are wanting to do an Alaskan cruise, I would definitely suggest spending a couple days in Vancouver before you go. It's It's like a whole other world, honestly, from like as silly as it sounds. Like, yeah, it's Canada. Canada's not that different than the United States. But it is. And our dollar goes a lot further there, which is nice. So every time I like would pay for something and think that like, oh, that's kind of pricey. Like, no, it's not. It's not. Um, Obviously, the currency exchange can fluctuate. So by the time you're listening to this, who knows? Maybe it's not as strong of a dollar. But I had a great time. I can't wait to go back. I'm currently talking about potentially planning a trip to Alaska next year. And I definitely think we'll probably try to go out of Vancouver just to get to explore some more. I also really want to go to Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island. People have amazing things to say about Victoria. I don't think I've ever been. My mom's probably going to be like, yes, you have. When you were 4 years old, we took you to Victoria, because that's what she does. Like, I'm like, I've never been to San Diego. And she's like, that's not true. You went when you were 3. I don't think that counts. Anyways, if you haven't been to Vancouver, definitely put it on your list of places to go. It's it's a really great spot. Also, like Whistler's not that far away if you're into like skiing and stuff. Um, it's a good time. I will say if you're not a city person, maybe don't go, because it's just like a sprawling city with like skyscrapers everywhere. Even when you're in the suburbs, it still feels like you're in the city, which to me is a good thing. Like, I think that urban planning everywhere should be like Vancouver, but that's because I'm very passionate about this kind of stuff. Um, Definitely add it to your list, though. It's a great spot. If you've been, reach out. Let me know. Let me know where I should go next time. I don't think Chris has ever been, so maybe we can let him know where he should go. But until then, I appreciate you listening to me talk about Vancouver. And once Chris is back, we should be talking about Lighthouse Point. Thank you so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it. And until next time, let's just go.